Well, hello again, and welcome to another, I'll say not just another, but a special episode, our 200th episode. We've been counting down the top, most listened to, most watched, maybe most needed, most relevant, most passed on to a colleague or a friend or a staff member episode. And today is the day. John, I feel like we need a drum roll of some sort, but would you announce the number one most listened to, most watched podcast of Converge Coaching? What is it?
Yeah, it's entitled "Shaping the Culture You Need," and Jim, you expressed some surprise over this, and so
Yes.
so did I. I thought,
Yeah.
wow, that's the most listened to and watched
Yeah.
episode, and it wasn't what I expected.
Yeah.
Um, and so, you know, but as I thought about it, I think that culture is something we don't learn about in Bible school. We experience it, but I don't
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
we understand what it is. I think as we get into our ministry, into our leadership roles, we're so busy just
Yeah.
knocking work out that the
Yeah.
idea of sitting back and thinking philosophically about how we want to behave as a
Yeah.
team, how we want to behave as a church, how we want to behave as a company.
Yeah.
We think,
Yeah.
that's for hippies, that's
Yeah.
for that's for dreamers. That's not for us. And yet
Mm-mm.
we know this, that culture is fuel.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you have a healthy, vibrant, values driven organization where those values are identified, defined, lived out, celebrated, and
Yeah.
become points of accountability, creates this amazing organizational energy that helps you
Yeah.
move the ball down the field toward the end zone, toward your
Yeah.
God-sized vision. I know
Yeah.
leaders that have amazing visions, and I believe they're God-given visions, but their culture
Yeah.
is toxic,
Yeah.
and they'll never get there with a toxic culture.
Yep.
Uh, a toxic culture is fuel as well, but it's the
Yeah.
explosive variety, the destructive
Yeah.
variety. And
Yes.
and so as you really kind of think about it, Jim, and drill down, it does kind of make sense to me that this is the one that really grabbed most of our audience. Um,
Yeah.
because it's something that is highly, I'm going to use a weird combination of words here. It's highly undervalued. It's
Yes. Yeah.
and I think that depending on which tribe you're in, um, you'd say we don't need any of that stuff. We just need more theology. We don't
Mm.
need any more of that stuff. We just need more expository preaching. We don't
Yeah.
need any of that stuff. We need more of
Yeah.
the Spirit. Uh,
Yeah.
and the truth, and you know what? I am not anti any of that stuff, by the way.
No.
Um,
No.
but you can have all of that, and if your culture is unhealthy, you won't get to where
Yes.
God intends you to go. And so I think maybe
Yes.
that's got something to do with it being as popular as it
Yeah.
was.
Well, and it's not just popular, it's biblical, it's spirit led, it's spirit empowered. Culture is those things. So you look at the Acts 2 church, there's a lot of culture. They're not being asked for offerings, they're bringing them. Why? That was the culture of generosity and widows and orphans
Yeah.
and trust. And if there was an issue, they worked it out. Why? Because that was their culture. They didn't split. Their culture was to stay unified in Christ. So even
Yeah.
those who want more of this or more of that, if you get deeper into any of those issues, you realize that being one in the spirit and being unified in doctrine and practice, those are all very biblical. So we are so glad. And John, I want to congratulate you on your leadership, on being who you are and being so faithful and so trustworthy for so many episodes. I know I speak for our listeners and our watchers when I say thank you for all the writing, all the reading, all the praying, all the listening, all the answering of questions. And I know that there are many, many good podcasts in front of us. But today we celebrate number 200 with our most watched, most listened to podcast. And we hope that you will enjoy this, pass it on, because it appears to be something that a lot of people want to listen to. So God bless you as you watch and as you listen now.
Hello again. Welcome to another episode of Leading from Alignment with our good friend, coach, mentor, and dare I say, tormentor, John Opalewski. How are you today, John?
Jim, I'm good. Just good to spend some time with you, recording pods, catching up a little bit. Just my day's always better when I get to spend some time with you.
Same here. Same here. Well, this is pod number 91. And why don't you just kind of give us a rundown? What are we talking about in 91 and 92 as well?
Yeah, in 91, we're going to introduce this concept of shaping the culture you need. I think every church, every business already has a culture, whether you acknowledge that or not. But let's be honest. Some businesses, some churches have wonderfully healthy cultures, and others not so much. We spend a lot of time on this podcast talking about things we never learned in Bible school.
No, no,
we really do. We spend a lot of time talking about that stuff. Today's one of those. Today's subject is one of those things that I was never taught in Bible school.
It's funny because it is theological. There is. I mean, you could use the Greek or Latin, the ethos, that sort of thing. But it certainly is. It has always been there. Jesus created a culture. Mm-hmm. Apostles brought culture from one kingdom to another. That sort of thing. Culture is not a non-biblical thing, but again, I think we think, well, is it theological? Well, it's too practical to be theological, but this is it. A great culture, when people know what to do and no one tells them what to do, because it's just the culture of this place, you feel it. A friendly church, inviting place, spiritual environment, the humility of the leaders or arrogance and judgmentalism. You can feel it walking in. It doesn't take long before you know whether you're in the right place or the wrong place. And it's not doctrine because no one said a word yet. It's culture. Yep. I'm welcome here or I'm not. In the first 90 seconds of arriving on the property, the culture of the church to some degree, and you're already responding to it.
That's right. And that's really true. That happens a lot. So when we talk to leaders about shaping culture, sometimes we get head nods and immediate buy-in. Other times we get blank stares and shoulder shrugs. But here's the truth about culture. Culture is fuel.
Yes.
And, Jim, we encourage churches to craft vision and develop a playbook. And you can craft an amazing vision, a compelling vision, a mouth-watering picture of this destination down the road. You can have a dynamic playbook, but only a healthy culture provides the fuel for that vision and playbook to become reality. And so what we're going to talk about today matters so much because culture has the capacity to fuel the vision that God has put in your heart for the organization you do. This works in churches, this works in businesses.
Yes, yeah.
But a toxic culture will always win over a great vision and a great playbook.
Yes.
So that's why we're talking about it today, because it matters so much. So in this first pod 91, part one of this, I would like to talk about just simply identifying core values. I worked in the business arena for 20 years, and every company that I worked for had core values that were on the wall.
Yeah.
But only one of those companies actually mean anything.
You think the same is true of churches?
I don't know. I hope not. But I would suspect that there might be a few churches where that is the case, maybe more than a few. Yeah. I'd like to talk about let's do this. Let's talk about what core values aren't first. Why don't we get that out of the way, right? So core values are not aspirational.
Okay.
By that I mean, an aspirational value is a value that an organization wants to have. They wish it already had it, or they believe they have to develop this thing in order to maximize success or reach their goals.
Right.
Aspirational values are different than core values.
Okay.
Core values are already there. They're already functioning. You may not have put a name to them yet. You may not even understand that they're operating. Core values do not change over time. They don't come and go with the needs of the organization. Gotcha. So when we identified the core values of Converge Coaching, Jim, we were already operating that way. but it just required me to take a step back and think about what are the most important behaviors here at our company. And it took me, once I took a step back and thought about it for a little bit, I thought, oh, that one's that I identified 4 within a few hours. Now we had to do some work after that, and we're going to talk about it, but their core values are identified. They're already operating, and I'm getting into this, into the second part of this. Aspirational values are things that you wish you had. So they're different. Does that make sense?
I think it does. So an aspirational value would be, we're going to be the nicest church. We're going to be the most spiritual church. We're going to be that. We're not, but we're going to be. That's more of a dream, not a core value.
Correct.
A value is the way we're going to get to there is by these things that we firmly believe.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're not aspirational. Core values are not permission to play values.
Okay. Explain that one.
So some companies I work for had integrity as one of the core values, or honesty or respect for others. You know, to me, if you don't have those, you shouldn't even be in the building, right? Those are just permission to get on the field.
Yeah.
We expect that out of anybody who comes to work with Converge Coaching. Yeah. You should expect that from anybody who comes to work at the church you lead. Those are permission to play. Here's what core values are. Now, we already kind of talked about this first one. They are identified more than they are created.
Right.
They're these behavioral traits that are inherent in an organization. And I think if I asked you, Jim, you could take a step back and look at the church that you lead, and you would be able to kind of rattle those off. Like, you know, here's the heart of our organization's identity, and I see it. Here's what they are. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Now, you said in a few hours you identified 4. Tell me a little bit about that process. How did you say, like, you can't choose 40 because that doesn't make sense. It's hard to make an acronym out of 40 qualities. You didn't focus on them. But when you found your first one, do you remember what the first one was and how you arrived? What questions did you ask yourself to get that one core value?
I just took a step back and I asked myself, what's important to me?
Yeah.
You know, what's important to the team? What is a behavior that we'll go to the mat for?
Right.
So that if it gets transgressed, we just say, no, that's not acceptable here.
Right.
So the first one I landed on was compassion. And that was just a word. Now we've taken it's on my whiteboard here in my office. It's compassion driven. And so I realized that God had given us this ability to step into the pain of our clients, and that when we work with our clients, they know that we feel. Right. And that sounds a little like syrupy, but we actually feel their pain. Because we've been in pain.
Right.
And so that behavior, Jim, matters so much. Right. So if I catch myself working with a client and I don't have that kind of compassion for them, I know that something's not right. It's almost like this rumble strip, right, on the freeway. Right. And if I veer off the freeway and I hit a rumble strip, my whole car shakes. It makes this obnoxiously not loud noise. Yeah. And I instinctively course correct. Right. That's exactly what a core value does. So gotcha. when I am working with a client and I'm not compassionate, I'm not stepping into that with them and feeling that with them, I know either I'm suffering from compassion fatigue, or there's something I'm missing, that's broken, that needs attention in my life. I'm bumping up against that. Look, we don't do this because we think we know better than you. We don't do this because, hey, we've got ABC. You just follow our little program here, and your life will be beautiful. Yeah. That's not why we do it. We do it because we think that leaders need an ear, a listening ear, a competent ear, but a caring ear.
Yes.
And so
Does that help kind of flesh that out a little
It
bit?
does, because it says Converge cares about the person so that the person can care for the organization. So
Right.
it isn't how to 10x your organization. It's how to be sane as you grow, how to stay married, how to stay healthy, how to stay,
Right.
you through the process.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. If I'm a client, I sit down with you and there's that half hour, just call us and we'll talk you through some things type, contact form. And we have our half hour. And I said, John, I really don't know. I mean, it's nebulous to me. We're a church, so loving God should be on that list. Loving each other should be on that list. Potlucks, every Thursday should be on that list. Like, how do you know when to cut the list off? Like, I mean, how would you lead me through that process of defining so I can communicate these core values?
Yeah, there would be some questions I'd want to ask you. And walk you through a series of questions, and in no particular order here. So I think I have number 4 here, but I'm going to use that one first. If I ask a pastor to ask himself this question: if you could clone anybody in the organization you lead, who would that be?
Good one.
And that doesn't take them very long, right?
No, I instantly knew who you were talking about.
Right. Yeah. And then I follow up with why.
Yes.
What stands out about them that would make you want 10 more of them?
Right.
And I want you to start to list those qualities that you see in them. This is like putting a puzzle together. So they come up with a list, 5, 6, 10 things. And so that's part of our conversation. We put that off to the side for a minute. Then I follow up by saying something like this: is that trait inherent and natural for your organization? And has it been apparent for the organization for a while? And then we give them time to respond to that, and we kind of work through that together. Here's a good question we ask them: are you more committed to that value than the majority of other organizations who do what you do?
Right.
So, our 4th core value is healthy work, rest, rhythm.
Yes.
I believe that we are more committed to that than most organizations.
Yes. For the right reasons.
Who do what we do.
Yeah.
And we value that. We hold that in high regard. I've had conversations with you about that. You've had conversations with me about that. We hold each other accountable to that, and I hold the team accountable to it.
Yeah, no, that's kind of at our church, sometimes we'll take temperatures at the door for those who are serving with children. During the COVID thing, we were doing that in this last year. And I think when you and I take each other's temperature, that's probably the question we're asking most often. How are you? Doesn't mean what'd you have for dinner last night. It means how is your work and rest and how are those things all coming together?
That's right.
If you're overwhelmed, how can I help you? If you're underwhelmed, how can we get you re-engaged and to each other?
Yeah. And so, it probably is a couple of conversations with a lead pastor or a business owner around those questions, and they begin to formulate the pieces and parts of it. And I have them spit them back out to me. We toss them around back and forth. And we come up usually with a list of 6 or 7 things. Now we have 4 core values. And the reason I did that is because I want to be able to remember them.
Yeah.
And I want my team to remember them.
Yeah.
So if you've got 14, it's going to be really hard for people to latch on to that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the beginning, Jim, of the conversation with a leader.
Well, listeners and watchers, that was it. Episode 200, our most popular countdown of the 5 most popular podcasts that we have ever done. And man, we look forward to some real winners in the future. John, why don't you just give us your thoughts? I know on maybe the last 5, on the last 200, or just this last one. Why don't you give us just, it calls for epic wisdom. So I'm going to be quiet now. and you are going to speak.
Yeah, no pressure, John, on that. I hope that this short dive into shaping culture has inspired you. And you might be wondering, where do I get started? How do I start this whole process of identifying values and shaping culture? You know what? Here's a couple of questions to ask yourself. Who in your organization would you like to have 10 more of?
Yeah.
And what is it about them that makes you want to clone them?
Yeah.
Why? And that will give you a clue, several clues into what really matters to you behaviorally
Yeah.
and in a value centric way.
Yeah.
Here's another great values development question. What are we like? And this is from our friend Jenny Catron. What
Yeah.
are we like as an organization when we're at our best?
Yeah.
And what behaviors repeatedly seem to bubble to the surface that when we're really doing our best work, this is evident, this is present. And if you struggle with this, and a lot of leaders do, man, get outside help. Don't try to do this
Yeah.
all by yourself.
Yeah.
Uh, Reach out, get some help, and I think it will help the process go maybe a little more smoothly for you. And
Yeah.
then, Jim, as I think about 200 episodes, I'm grateful for your friendship
Hmm.
throughout all of it. Uh,
Same here.
you are somebody that I can say whatever is on my mind, whatever's in my heart, whatever I'm struggling with.
Yeah.
Um,
Same here.
Thanks for being my friend and my confidant for all of these years. Um, I think about all of the leaders that we are privileged to have any kind of input into their life.
Yeah.
And you know, we we wouldn't be here doing this without you, without our
Mm.
listeners and watchers. We just wouldn't be here. And we
Yeah.
admire what you do for a living.
Yes.
We admire it. We know
Yeah.
that it has become exponentially more difficult to lead
Yeah.
the last 3 or 4 years. And
Yeah.
your work has become more complex. Um, and we hope that the pods have really been a source of practical help, encouragement, inspiration to you,
Yeah.
feeling maybe help making you feel like you're not alone
Yeah.
in that. And so I'm just so grateful for all, excuse me, for all of those things, Jim.
Yeah.
And as I look forward to the future, it's going to be about the same stuff. I mean, we're going to have new
Yeah.
material. We're going to interview new
Yeah.
guests. We'll
Yep.
bring back some of our old favorite guests,
Yep.
but we're here to try to help you deal with what you're facing in your
Yeah.
personal life,
Yeah.
but also in your professional life. So I hope that you feel that if you're listening or watching, you feel
Yeah.
our heart toward you. We don't use this podcast to sell stuff, and I'm not against podcasts that sell stuff. Please
Nope.
don't.
Nope.
We do this because we care about leaders, and we
Yeah.
hope that in some small way, this podcast has influenced you and helped you become a better version of you and a better leader, a better husband, a better wife, a better dad, a
Yeah.
better mom. Um, and so, Jim, those are all the things that are on
Right
my
on.
heart. I want to just say give a shout out to our engineers who
Yeah.
nobody knows, really the
Yeah.
work that they do. I want to thank Larry Claire, who handles all our video production, and Kaya Green, who handles the audio. Larry and Kaya, I know that you'll be listening to
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
And we want to let you know, both Jim and I want to let you know how much we appreciate you,
Yeah.
love you, and we're so grateful that you're part of the team here. We couldn't do it without you. So we hope
Yeah.
that you know how much we appreciate and love you.
Yeah. Well, let me just say this then in closing, John, and that is that of the top 5 episodes, it's interesting with multiple PhDs, world class coaches. I think of the Josh Spurlocks, the Jenny Cantrons, and the people who've authored incredible books and teach incredible seminars. That the top 5 they all came from you. So thank you
Oh,
again for your wisdom, and I know
I
you're a
think
humble
they came
man.
from
So
both of us, Jim. I want to,
well,
let's be fair here,
Well, the Johnny
this has
Carson
been a
show
team
had Ed
job.
McMahon. Yeah, the Johnny Carson did have Ed McMahon, and I think that's my role. Is not to be Johnny Carson, but to be Ed McMahon. So I'll see you soon with Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes as Ed McMahon's sidekick. But I know I speak for the audience. Thanks for having this in your heart. Thanks for all the hard work you put into it. Thanks for getting great guests, people who really have a heart to serve leaders. And next week we start again, episode 201. We're going to make it the best, most listened to, most watched episode ever, because we start over again and we care deeply, maybe more so now even than we did 200 episodes ago. So God bless you, our dear watcher and listener. I'll say for the 200th time, we love you. We believe in you. It's Tuesday. You haven't quit, and you're not going to quit. You're going to finish, and you're going to finish well. So we pray for you. We care for you. We love you. We're proud of you. Go out there and do it again. Lead from alignment.